Hello, my name is Jason Christensen, and this topic is about natural born leaders. It's my belief that if we nurture natural born leaders from childhood and prepare them for leadership roles, our world will be more harmonious. The natural born leader, I believe, is not likely to become a tyrant. Who becomes the tyrant? I imagine as a child, there are social forces at work, even amongst children who have a sense collectively of right or wrong, and they identify particular individuals who seem troublesome, who seem that they to be those who would disrupt the social order. And those children even execute an agenda of righteous suppression of their power. And those future tyrants sense that, and they harbor a sentiment of resentment and a vengeance that they want to assert themselves in powerful positions to overcome those who righteously sought to suppress them. The problem with certain natural born leaders, let's say the INFP personality type, which is mine, is we lead through example, which is fine enough. Look at how I live my lifestyle. Sometimes it annoys me people watch me, like when I'm swimming, and I think, why are they watching me? Well, I guess I am leading through by example, but I think that model may become secondary when too many tyrants or too much tyrannical force disrupts the social order to such a degree that a radical influx of natural leadership is required to save the system, to preserve the health of society. And it may be those moments when the natural born leader, who is a lot of times, I can speak of my own experience, accustomed to waiting in the sidelines almost for life. Okay, well, I'll just wait until they recognize my abilities or my gifts for leadership. I'll just wait because, I don't want to be rude and interject myself into the situation. And you also assume they have collective wisdom to see those traits and characteristics and how they value society. Well, after a while, you become tired of it, or maybe it's that change that occurs in a person's adult life when their strengths and weaknesses tend to reshuffle. So effectually, there are personality changes that occur. Maybe that's what happens with like a late stage, late bloomer um, leader arises. Uh, so you can also think, well, there's what about the case of racism? I still think, I mean, it's not anything that we want in society. We're in a global community now. We have to train ourselves to overcome that impulse to suppress. I mean, I'm making a parallel to suppressing the tyrant, and well, actually compare and contrast what it means to suppress somebody who's suffering racial injustice. Because that person who's suffering racial injustice, first of all, I do think the motivation is something almost inherently biological or based in our evolution for survival. The whole makeup of a tribe is groups that look similar, share similar language is or share same language and customs. They see somebody who doesn't look quite alike like them, and then it's automatically it's thought this is an adversary. Probably has something to do with our wiring as carnivores or something. But in this day and age, we need to figure out a way to overcome that. But I'm just saying, I'm not excusing the racist inclination, but I also feel like you know there is something almost in our primordial consciousness that that sort of primes us to identify the outside other for the preservation of what is considered the inside. But for that individual suffering that racial repression, it's a different situation because it seems like that's unjust. They're fighting against injustice. And so a leader who rises from, is able to gain social power by effectively throwing off those chains of oppression, is doing it, like I say, it's a righteous cause. So I would guess that type is not necessarily inclined to become tyrannical. I mean, it's maybe that's overly idealistic. I mean, we have the most extreme poverty and violence in neighborhoods in America where there are no opportunities. People are born poor, they die poor, they don't have education, they don't really have they don't have a lot of hope. Maybe athletics or pop stardom, but then it's a different issue. Like if you have crime, I mean that's probably a lot of an offshoot of being desperate to survive, not having healthy food available, which can cause brain inflammation, which leads to all sorts of personality difficulties. That set aside, and it is tragic, and it's something that really should be dealt with. But I'm just saying, you have that type of a natural leader who's unlike the tyrannical. The tyrant is repressed by a child. His peer is the children who are his peers sense there's something wrong, or this person has dark motives which we need to repress, and then as an act of revenge, that person grows into a tyrant, versus unjust forces that hold down a person racially. And if that person to empower oneself righteously is more inclined to become a righteous leader rather than a tyrant. So it's the idealists like me. We can talk a big game, and then people stand around and they ask, okay, what do we do? Well, that's up to you. I mean, really an idealist as leader, gives a vision of what is in front of you, what the problems are. But the natural born leader comes from people. Especially the INFP is best at relations with others that are informal and egalitarian, right? We don't rise to power to dominate, to repress. We come from a collective consciousness and see the cause, and there has to be a groundswell of support to elevate us as leaders to represent the common good. So that's where sometimes the message falls short. You say, well, I agree with everything you're saying, but let's talk about its implementation. And what I am saying is, do it through subtle subterfuge. To give a really strange image that came to my mind is entangle the nostril hairs with the walrus tusk. What do you mean by that? It's an image. It's a disruptive image. I mean, I guess in terms of, a subtle gesture in your workplace or in society that you can do. You have the forces that be, which are those that are repressive, the systemic repressive obstacles. If you can somehow entangle the nostril hairs with the with the walrus tusks, just the image, the brain, the two individuals, they come upon this scene, and they're like, what do we do with this? What does this mean? And then it taps into a different part of the brain. It's something that then, if there is that gesture of subtle subterfuge, that's healthy because it shakes up the system, and it requires some response of how to deal with it. And probably the mechanisms of repression are not prepared to deal with those instances of subtle subterfuge, because all their power goes towards preservation of a status quo, and it's really, once it becomes programmatic, there's not a lot of interface for dealing with the novelty, the novel original gestures of disruption. And that's your cause in the workplace. What can you get away with when, in terms of some sort of positive improvement for your immediate surroundings, the situation? What can you insert? Because that insertion and this insertion multiplied times 1 million is how you change society, because one gesture at a time. First, it might be shocking. It might be shocking to those who, if they stopped to think about, what it's all about, would probably support it. But suddenly it's shocking. And it becomes less shocking. And then it becomes normalized. So again, the natural born leader is good for the world. I honestly believe that creates a more harmonious world. And it's a matter of how in childhood we nurture those qualities. Do we go based on personality type, some sort of assessment? Those who are virtuous, right, have the betterment of the world as something, they feel strongly about in their hearts. It's a matter of character. I don't know. I'm just saying these are ideas that need to be explored. Don't wait for the answer. Take the idea and build off of it. That's why some of this may seem rough. It's like, these are, in my opinion, as someone who's was called by an advisor known to be an original thinker. Okay, that's fine, but I'm not going to solve all the problems. I'm putting out, a blueprint or an image for reform, but it's up to you to implement it. That's what you get when you have somebody who leads by example and an idealist. They're not good at the A, B, C, D, E, but they're visionaries, right? And that's what I want. I don't like it. It's ridiculous. We should not live in a country where millions of people have to work for $18 an hour with all the costs. And this is a wealthy country, but it's only greed. It must only be greed, which doesn't allow us to enjoy more of that wealth. There should be a much fair distribution of wealth. That's good for everybody. Everybody's happier. We are a collective. We are social beings. All creatures are social beings. There's always packs. Dogs run in packs, and then there's a pack leader. It's just how we survive. So I've been one who waits quietly by the side and waiting to be appreciated for my leadership skills. I think this is about all I probably have to do, but support us. And I am a creative writer, and this is where I'm going to plug my book. He's like, why should I read it? Why? Because first of all, there are a lot of ideas in there that will probably inspire some ideas in you, and especially some systemic ills, which by which you feel like you've been victimized. I offer, in just as one example in an essay, a way to look critically at how we're all placed in terms of how we perform academically, that there are holes, there are problems, there are flaws in that structure. And just knowing that, seeing that perspective, that how there are flaws in it, may give you a stronger sense of your own intelligence, aptitude, because how it's measured, I think, is flawed and limited. That's why. Because, as I write in my book, art and creative writing being a form of art maintains the morale of society. Art raises the morale of society. Why do you go into an art museum? To see art. You want to see, maybe it's a form of escape, but some model of life, which is not so clinical or harsh or metrics driven or sterile, which may seem like, or toxic, attributes of a work environment. You have somebody who's essentially striving for freedom to express oneself as freely as possible with liberty. That's a model. The democratic soul, the liberated soul, tapping into that consciousness. You go to a museum, you see somebody working in that vein, or a writer, some model, something something you can hold on to, something that gives you a feeling that there is a better world for all of us, if it's in the imagination, if it's in our fantasies, and when it's actualized in art. That has value for society. That's healthy for society. So here's my book, and it's called Baby Loves Magic, Jason Heath Christensen. It's available on Amazon. And if you're wondering about the title, Baby Loves Magic, it's because I thought that'd be a great band. That'd be a great name for a pop band or a rock band, because those words come up in songs all the time. Baby, baby, baby. Love, 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 love. You can do magic. Those words come up. So I thought, hey, talk about an ideal great name for a band title. Well, I don't have a band. I'd love to be a singer in a band. But the next best thing is to use that as a book title. But I also think, it's supporting an artist. Another thing is subscribe to this channel. Why? I get it. It's like, I don't subscribe to channels. Who am I to ask you to do it? But I want to monetize this. I want to be able to make money. I'm comfortable saying that to make a living as an artist, because I also know that, I for a while, because my INFP personality type is the least motivated to make money of any personality type. And it can be a real hindrance. But I also feel like I'm not afraid, because if I had a lot of money, if I had J. Paul Getty's money, and he's sitting miserable in this mansion, I have enough presence of mind to think, let's get out there and help some animals. Let's get out there. Let's use this money and do something good. Like, not just in abstract terms, and going and funding an animal shelter, which is fine too. But like, okay, you find destitute dogs in horrible living conditions and their family is poor. Just say, how much for that dog? And I will buy it. And if I can't take care of it, I will pay for that dog to be taken care of by somebody else. And so that animal has a good life. That's where it comes out, doing good, being a natural born leader, coming from the collective consciousness, with the betterment and improvement and survival of the world at heart. These are the things that we do. So it may seem like this is a political speech. It isn't a bit. It is a bit. You also have writers. Ayn Rand is a political writer. I don't read her books. I've never read one of her books, so don't look to me for expertise on her writing. But I also think there is some degree of separation as a political writer, and maybe some of my writing is somewhat political. But when and it's something I'm working on too. But when characters have these political views, it's a step or a layer or several back from the writer. And I almost feel like it's better for the writer, instead of just being a politician, say, I believe this and this is what I want to have done if I'm elected president or whatever. When it's put in writing, which is probably more powerful and effective, and a more sustained message over through time, beyond my life and so on. It's like you can't really link those views to the writer, because there's a degree of separation. It's fiction, it's imagination, it's reflective of some ideas that go on, but it's not necessarily like, this is my agenda. Maybe that's just something of somebody who thinks abstractly and doesn't follow a logical way of thinking. A linear approach to ideas. It's more abstract, it's more nebulaic, it's atmospheric. So anyway, I was curious to see how long this video would last, and it's nearly 20 minutes just speaking extemporaneously with very few notes on a topic which I think I know I feel passionately about.